Mike Trout here, and I'm going to give a talk on the Foundups tokenization system that's going to drive social beneficial capitalism, or I call SOCAPism, right? Social capitalism. For more information, you can visit foundups.org. That's our Discord. You can connect with me there. Best way to message. I'm Undowdu on there, and Foundups. Here is this Undowdu, 6,000 years ago, sitting on the Mayan zodiac prophecy, right? And it's the foundation of the fifth age. If you know the Mayan calendar, it's the end of the fourth age. Transition to the fifth age is built on what? Bitcoin. And the blockchain, which is coming out of Undowdu's head. I shared it with the founders of Ethereum. The framework, what is the Open Startup Innovation Framework? That is what Ethereum is. That is what the blockchain is. It's a whole bunch of technologies built on it, and they actually did it. And AI. I'm going to talk about open beneficial AI and the Bitcoin Vault. So the foundation of fifth age, as I mentioned, is It's going to undo the dollar and replace it as the global reserve currency, and become the foundation for what supports social beneficial capitalism. The DAO, Bitcoin Global Reserve Funds, and finally the DO, which are Foundups stablecoins. So Bitcoin is going to be important on these three components. Finally, there is, secondly, there is the blockchain. It's Foundups are ubiquitous. They're blockchain neutral, which means they can take place on any blockchain, as I'm going to talk about. A simple term is a founder with an idea for solving a problem that is focused on the problem, not on taking advantage of the problem financially, right? The startup ultimately chooses to take advantage of a problem. A lot of problems, unfortunately, don't have a financial obligation. So the person who's doing a Foundup is really focused on the problem. The money side of thing will come, secondary, right? And most importantly, Foundups are powered by community, individuals, and their communities. It's not powered by banks and by the 1% and other things. It's actually powered by the people for the people, right? And that's the blockchain. And as I mentioned, the blockchain comes out of Undowdu's head. It's a lot of technology. The blockchain was actually invented by the cyberpunks, which I'm going to talk about. And finally, the AI. And the entire system, the fifth age, is driven with smart contracts, deep learning, and machine learning, which will become open beneficial AI. And this AI answers to you, right? Not to corporations. The difference between obey AI, right? Open beneficial AI and AI that we have now. The AI we have now is selfish. It seeks to manipulate, seeks to control, seeks to use us, enslave us by taking our information. Obey protects our information, governs our information, and ultimately obeys you. So imagine AI built in such a way that each individual on the planet is treated equally by the AI, instead of AI, which is being trained to take advantage of groups and individuals in order to drive their profit margins. You're creating something that's selfish and something that is, what I would call Terminator and Matrix AI. That's what we're building right now. So, in talking about the story of Foundup. So here's the story. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, for cyberpunks, these are radical. These guys wanted to bring down the World Bank. They saw the problem of the internet. They saw the opportunity of a decentralized world. And in order for that to happen, we needed a framework to build it on. And they developed the blockchain. Brock Pierce is, as soon as he saw Bitcoin, which came out, or he understood the value, he saw the future of the blockchain. He's right here next to them. He's smiling at it. He's looking at it going, yes. How did Brock Pierce have such, insight? Well, back in the, late 90s, he was selling gold to Ultima Online and EverQuest and all these big games. He was dealing with virtual currencies. So he saw the power of virtual currencies, and the idea of a virtual currency in a game versus a planetary virtual currency was pretty obvious to him. So he got into Bitcoin very early. Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Satoshi in Bitcoin. Here he is, ephemeral. You don't know who he is. He's ephemeral, and that's interesting. And they're hovering in the skies, Bitcoin. And you'll notice that there is the twins. They were early investors, the Winklevoss twins. There they are at the top, the two Winklevoss, one and two. And they really helped get things going because all of a sudden they started buying lots of Bitcoin because they saw the value, and they saw the potential of it. Now you'll notice that Matthew N. Wright, the cougar, is staring at Bitcoin. He hated Bitcoin. He wanted to destroy Bitcoin. And he started working on a project back in 2011 called Small Planet, which was the stealth name for Ethereum. And Vitalik, which I'm going to talk about, and Michal Lisi, a guy called Vladimir, were working on this project. And here's Michal Lisi. Now, the interesting image here is actually from a point of view of me looking through the screen, and you can see the mouse and the keyboard, me Skyping. So this is a Skype. This is, it's pointing at Undao. So imagine him looking around. He's looking out into it. And you can see also that Undao is staring at, Matthew N. Wright and also Bitcoin. He's looking down, right? So his first interaction, his first started with Matthew, which was the CEO founder of Bitcoin Magazine. So it was, he awokened Matthew, he awokened him to the potential, and then his coder, Michal Lisi, who basically shared it, the idea with Joe Lubin, Ethereum Joseph. He's the money. And you'll notice that Joe is staring and he really hates Bitcoin. He wants to devour Bitcoin. It just carries on. You got the cougar wanting to devour Bitcoin. You've got the big VC wanting to devour the two big VCs, right, in Bitcoin. And you notice he's right next to Michal Lisi, which Michal Lisi is the connection. And then they decided, Vitalik was a writer, so all the knowledge that Undao shared with Michal Lisi, plus the work that they had done, they put it all together, and they started, and that's Vitalik Buterin started coding out, and he was the only person on the white paper. The reason why is because they were afraid of me. They didn't know who I was, how much money I had, and since I was connected to Michal Lisi, and in 2014, when I brought this to their attention, Michal Lisi was kicked off the organization because of his exposure to me. So he was removed from the board of directors of Ethereum. Pretty much when I started saying, "Hey guys, your work is based on my work," and reaching out to Michal and reaching out to a number of other people, and they all circled their wagons. The classic startup. But he's the sacrificial rabbit. They put the rabbit on there because I had never communicated with him, and that is why they're. Now, the real powerhouse that really made Ethereum work was Gavin Woods. He's the squirrel. He did all the work, right? Busy squirrel, did all the coding, came up with the language that Ethereum was run on, Solidity, whatever it's called. So I can't even say the name, but it's the computer language that he invented. Another important individual back at the time, looking down, he's staring at Bitcoin, right? Is Pomp and Max Kaiser. They're I call them there's sophists. So the sophists out there helping to build the word, the vision of it. And there's another one, a Pump and whatever his name is, Apopopoulos or something. Apopopoulos, the guy who's always doing talks. So those three, I think that image, I don't know who of those three it represents, but one of those three is that image. It looks a little bit to me like Pomp. He's got the droopy eyes, but then again, the haircut, he's got Max Kaiser. So, and kind of like his interesting kind of beard or something going down around the side. So it could be any three of them, but it's the sophist of the blockchain, or maybe it represents all of them. Okay. And very important individuals are the founders of Cardano, okay, not Cardano, Aragon, Lewis and George. Now the Aragon, this is representing two individuals. It's square, right, coming together and working on the framework for the DAO. So the DAO, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations, is very important because the planet's going to be run on DAOs. So Lewis and George basically started creating that, and that's them there. And then there's Charles Hoskins, who I talked to 2018. I think we talked 2018 at an event in a little bit in Tokyo. And I've interacted with him. And back in 2016, I kind of was like, what's your agenda? What are you doing? What's your vision? And then he went on to kind of show his vision. He left Ethereum Classic. He was one of the first kind of community guy. I think his corporation is still working with him, but he went on to Cardano, a vehicle for Danos. Now, interesting thing that Charles, he talks about the Ouroboros. And this is, again, you know, I'm staring, interacting with him. And Cardano, a vehicle for Danos, right? And the Ouroboros is one of the code. And the Ouroboros is the irony is that the way he describes the Ouroboros is the collapse of our planet by our business model. The head of the snake is us, right? There's two names of the Ouroboros. The Ouroboros is the first tribe of man arriving in Africa off the coast of Yemen, where Atlantis was, right? And it sunk because of climate change. It didn't sink, the waters rose, right? It just and forcing the first tribe of man onto the shore of Africa that populated the world. The Ouroboros prophesies to return and devour the planet. And the Ouroboros is our business model, and ultimately Undaudu is back to slay, to cut off the head. And his weapon is Obey, which is on his back. Here is blockchain Yang, Andrew Yang. He's really important. He's going to be an important person in the future, whether he doesn't make president this time around because of DNC, but he definitely has a future in him. He's definitely going to be an important figure in social capitalism. Humanity first is social capitalism. Here he is, got his arms up, right? Andrew Yang, the champion. He's got the American flag on his body, right? And this is number 19. On 9/19/2019, you'll meet 19. This is a very important person. He's a mentor of mine in Japan, Akira Hishigawa. You see the film role. He did the advertising for the 98 Olympics, and that, we're in Hakuba Winter Olympics, and that's his movie role. And he is a VC, and as Foundups develops, he's going to be instrumental in launching Foundups in Japan. And this guy, or her, or she, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who she is. Or he, or what, or who. But it's an interesting, and I don't know. So maybe that's you. Anyway, so talking about the time frame of Foundups, here's one of my first diagrams. This was actually my first diagram describing Foundups social innovation framework, what you call the blockchain, built on Bitcoin, which means the blockchain, right? All right. So here is, the idea starts, it gets tokenized, does it validate? The people, does it grow? That's called the passive, crowdfunding. People actually have an option to purchase the tokens too in the future. So that's the passive crowdfunding. That's it. So in 2009, I started working on Foundups. And that's a whole new story I'm not going to get into why and what was the motivation. 2010, I was like, what would these new things become? These, decentralized startups. Well, they'd become, I call them open corporation organizations, what Ethereum or Vitalik would rename to DAOs, driven by AI, right? In 2011, I shared the Founders framework, the Bitcoin magazine founders, and that Michal Lisi was my direct contact, and also Matthew and Wright, who's gone AWOL, disappeared, probably dead. No one knows who he is, or where he is, or what he's doing. Ultimately, in 2013, a couple years later, and this is 2012. So by 2012, I'd shared. That's why the end of the mine, the transition was I passed on the knowledge that gave the inspiration for taking the work that Matthew and Wright was doing, which was called smallplanet.net. Right, planet was it? You can there's traces of it in BitTalk and other things. I mean, if you do your due diligence, you'll find out. And I'm sure if you look at the code of that and the vision, it fits a lot with Ethereum. Probably is Ethereum. At DevCon 2016, after the DAO was hacked, I pulled together a team, went to DevCon, and was offered $5 million by Brandon Kersner, to launch Foundups as a spring ICO. I ended up being flown to South Africa. I ended up rejecting the deal, which in hindsight was good because my dad ended up coming down with cancer the next year. And for the next 3 years, I was helping my father. So in 2019, after my father passed, I went back to working on Foundups, and at DevCon 5 launched Blockfest Undoubtedly, the standing event, and gave out a whole bunch of T-shirts, both bunch of hats, and Undoubtedly the 8th, the 9th, the 10th is the Dow and the Do Day, 3-day event annually to celebrate the standing up of Undoubtedly. It's kind of like the crucifixion, the awakening, and then the resurrection, right? Or the resurrection and then the transcendence, right? Undoubtedly, the 3 days of of it. And I'm now in 2020. I'm launching the first Foundups, and I'm going to share with the framework. I'm still developing Foundups after 10 years, figuring it out how it's all going to work. And now finally, I have the actual framework on how it works. So the Foundup framework is really simple. It copies Bitcoin. So, but instead of 21 million tokens, there's only 17 tokens. Instead of every 4 years, it's every 2 years. So I'm taking Bitcoin, I'm shrinking it down a little bit, right? So in 10 years, all the tokens are gone, and the halving doesn't take every 4, every 2. And it releases the tokens into a pool. So this is all smart contracts and everything else. And it releases into a pool that anyone can launch their own tokens on it. It can happen on any network. So you can code this out on Ripple, on EOS, on you name it, Ethereum, whatever, on RXT, I think it's what it is, the Bitcoin one. So it doesn't matter what framework. If you're interested in coding that's joining, then do it. Come and join the work. And then finally, there are the stakeholders. There's shareholders. It's and this is actually it's creators, collaborators, and consumers. It's not customers, right? Customers, it's consumers, whoever consumes the product. So we don't have customers, we have stakeholders, and they're all pretty much equal. And I'll talk about kind of the framework, right? That needs to be fixed there. So you have the token bank. It releases so the 17 million tokens to a token pool. Actually, the bank should be the square, and that should be, I want to fix that. And then 20% goes to the network. So everyone who's part of the network, thinking of the miners in Bitcoin, that's the network. So everyone who has our app is going to get an airdrop every time there's a transaction, and the transaction is a consumer. The consumer is a transaction. See, there's no consumer for Bitcoin, so except for those people mining it. So in our case, the consumer, because everything has to be driven by the consumer, 80% goes to CCC, the creator, the collaborators, and the consumers, and they share. And obviously, the consumer gets most of the pool. He gets 80% of the pool, and the other 20% is shared amongst the two. The second thing that I think is really important is the collaborators, because without the collaborators, it doesn't matter how good the creator is. So they will get the second mark, so they'll get 80% of the 20% that's remainder, and finally the 20% of the, and I don't know what that will bring. So it's always 80-20, 80-20, 80-20 going all the way down. Get it. So they get 80% and 20% left over, and then 80% of the collaborator, he gets 80% of the 20%, and then finally the 20% that's left over is that. So that's all easily broken down. And a percentage of everything goes to what's known as the Bitcoin Vault. So the Bitcoin Vault is basically another token bank. It's within the token bank that stores the tokens that are ultimately available for people to purchase. So these are tokens. So as the model drives, it creates this bank. And what the thing is saying you can buy these with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin starts to flow in for these tokens. So if you're someone who isn't, because all these products launch locally, so if you're not around locally for it, but you still want the product, once it starts to take off, these coins are available in the Bitcoin vault for Bitcoin. Now understand, the Bitcoin never leaves, and ultimately the Bitcoin becomes the underwriting currency that's going to underwrite all the tokens and all the token pools out there. Make sense? And what happens is a new token is going to come eventually when Danos come into it. So first are Foundups, then Danos, and when Danos come in, introduces the Ups coin, right? So and the Ups coin is underwritten by the Bitcoin vault. All right, that's it. That's the story. My name is Mike Trout, Undoubtedly, the Sadhu of the blockchain. I just shared with you social capitalism. That's coming, and the Foundups tokenization. Again, if you want to connect with me, foundups.org is our Discord, and foundups.com, you can read more about what we're doing. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching.